Thank you. Good evening. Today is March 30th, Tuesday. This is a special meeting and study session of the Litchfield Elementary School District Governing Board. Welcome. This meeting is called to order. First, before we get started in our agenda tonight, can everyone hear me okay? All right. I just feel really quiet up here all of a sudden. I want to make a special introduction. For a month or two, or at least several weeks now, we have had a hole since Mrs. Weathersby left us. And I want to give a warm welcome to Dr. Tara Armstead, sitting next to me here, our newest board member who was appointed through the Maricopa County Superintendent's Office. She is a mother and an educator and someone who's lived in our community for a very long time. And I won't put words in her mouth, but I hope is very anxious to jump in. So Dr. Armstead, welcome.
Thank you. I just want to first say this is a huge honor and privilege for me. I realize that I'm stepping in a very unique situation, and my goal is to work with everyone for the best of our students and the community. Thank you.
We are glad to have you here, so welcome aboard. We're going to jump in right away on our agenda if you're following along to item 1A, our projected budget discussion with Wendy Qualls.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the Governing Board, Superintendent Gunning. Tonight we have a presentation on the 2021-2022 Maintenance and Operations, otherwise known as our M&O, projected budget. I'm Wendy D. Qualls, the Executive Director of Finance. This presentation aligns with our strategic plan under Finance and Resources to increase stakeholder knowledge. So the timeline for the approval of the information for the budget, we started back on March 2nd with a special governing board meeting. We were scheduled to talk about a reduction in force policy and procedures. However, Superintendent Gunning decided early on that we would move forward and retain staff rather than doing a reduction in force. We talked about approving our staffing numbers for our general classroom sizes. We approved our contract language on March 3rd. We had a discussion on March 16th regarding the budget. And for tonight's meeting, we have on the agenda for your approval, the projected budget, the insurance plans, salary reduction plan, work calendars, and the approval to issue contracts. So the budget is based on student enrollment. In the last presentation, the number was based on the 100th day information. I've updated the student count based on yesterday's information, and it increased by 153 students. I also increased the funding per student. Originally in the presentation, it included the adjustment for the 20 by 20, but it did not include inflation. So tonight's amount does include the inflation of 1.22%. So the projected budget is $74,287,012. The estimated expenditures for the current year is about $76.5 million. So to determine the amount of expenditures for the following year, we add to that the increases we know of and decreases. So salary and benefits for the classroom site fund, just under 400,000. And so again, that is where in the prior year, the 20 by 20 final payment was in the classroom site fund. That's going to be moved into our M&O fund. Salary and related benefits increase for performance-based pay, retirement contributions, utility cost increases. Performance award advancements are for the employees that will be moving up a level next year. Other purchase services, the override election. For the decreases, we have staffing changes for instructional, staffing changes for student school administration and support, and also staffing changes at the district level. Most of these staffing changes were done by creating a formula or using our classroom class sizes, approved target class sizes. Another deduction, if we need it at the end of the year, would be to delay the payment of our property casualty insurance until the 22 or the 2023 years, sorry, the 2023. And then also to implement additional energy compensation measures for 200,000. So breakdown on the governor's 20 by 20 plan. It includes an additional $600 for teachers, reading specialists, special area teachers, also for our instructional behavior coaches, ELL coordinators, and student advisors. The anticipated, again, total is just under 400,000. There will be additional changes in the classroom site fund for next year's amount. I was anticipating having the classroom site fund amount today. It did not come in, so once we have that information, we'll recalculate what those stipends will be. And then that amount will be included in the contracts. So for the additional amounts for performance-based increases, it's based on a 1% increase. You can see going across by level the amount that would be earned for each employee category for a total of 607,000. So when we look at the staffing changes at the instructional level, decreased by 48 teachers paid from M&O. 13 of those positions will be picked up in the ESSER fund or in results-based funding, leaving 35 for attrition. Special area teachers, 1.1, and that has happened through attrition. Reading specialists increasing by a 0.5, but also then attrition, sorry, grant is 0.5 and attrition is 1. Special area teachers, 3 programs, special self-contained programs will be decreased. When the 13 positions are funded from the grant, the district still would be paying the M&O override amount out of M&O. So I added 44,000 back to cover that. Instructional assistants, 7 hours, 10 of those positions and 10 through attrition. The majority of those are related to the 3 self-contained classrooms. And then 5.5 hour instructional assistants, 8, 2 to be retained by a grant and 6 through attrition. And that's normal each year. We approve 5.5 instructional hours for a 1-year period only. So that's something we generally do each year. Staffing changes at the school administration and support level. As we added the principal for the digital learning academy, assistant principals decreased by 2. 1 position, 1 FTE to be picked up by the grant, and 1 was through the attrition. Student advisors, 3. 1 will pick up through the grant, 2 through attrition. Behavior coaches, 0.5. That just has to do with the allocation of shift. One school moved the type of support that they needed on their campus. Instructional coaches, 2.5 decrease, 1.5 will be through the ESSER grant and 1.0 through attrition. Again, we have the amount needed to pay the M&O override stipend for the positions paid from the grant. At this point, we're looking at having an administrative assistant for the Digital Learning Academy. We have not created or posted that position yet. Security guards decreased by 2. That's happened through attrition. ISS aides for the middle school over 1,000. And those positions were based only on when the school was at 1,000. So those will be decreased by attrition. Staffing changes at the district level, reducing a psychologist and that position will be picked up through the ESSER grant. Psychologist intern decreased by 1. Occupational therapist decreased by 0.5. Facilities tech 3 decreased by 0.1. Groundskeeper decreased by 1 position. Transportation supervisor decreased by 1. Transportation office staff decreased by 1. And student transporters decreased by 7. Many of those positions were unfilled throughout the year, but I had included in my estimated cost just to keep the cost down. So we knew what were going to pay for this year, but they were not filled. So as you look at the 7 transporters, that's not 7 that we need to attrition out. That was 7 positions. Attrition's already happened. On the benefits clerk, 0.5, and that was a fiscal year 21 position only. And then a district level office position, we anticipate some attrition there, so 1 position. So when we look at the total, the estimated expenditures about 71.5 million. The budget limit 74.3 million. If we carry forward 5.6 million, the available budget 68.7 million. That remains an amount for expenditures exceed our revenues by 2.8. Rainy day or the other cash accounts. So in the Medicare reimbursement fund, 1.8 million. The Civic Center, 600,000, and indirect costs 355,000. We haven't.
Our budget.
So the Medicaid reimbursement is funding we receive, bill the state for that through their Medicaid program. Usually it takes up the rental of our facilities. An indirect cost.
Column where we would get that $2.8 million.
The routes and students enroll, transportation looks at the routes and we modify drivers.
Okay, that's better. I don't have any more questions though. Thanks, Wendy.
Comments from Wendy? Jeremy, no. Wendy, is, one of many sort of discussions we've had about budget. So walk me through the timeline moving through the next series of events. Obviously, this budget could potentially change or be different based on things that are coming down the pike. So what's next on the list after this?
So next on the list would be to revise our current year budget in May. Then we will do a proposed budget in June that would be published in on the Department of Ed's website. And then in July, we would adopt the budget.
Okay. Any questions about timeline or next steps? Okay, this is just a complicated process. I want to make sure everyone knows where we're going and what we have left to finish out. So this is for next year. We still have to finish out this year's budget, and then over the summer we will submit this to the Department of Ed and review it again in July, is what I'm understanding.
Yes, it won't be as detailed. It'll be on their forms.
Sure.
They send out for us to complete.
Okay, if there are no additional questions or conversation, I will entertain a motion on the projected budget. Thank you, Jeremy.
I second.
Great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next up is item 2A, approving the consent agenda items. So I will open that up for discussion and or a motion if we're ready to move forward.
I motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. I will second, but I do have an item for discussion, please.
Okay, motion has been seconded. I will open the floor for discussion.
I just have one question, Superintendent Gunning, on the
2C, the Assistant Director of Special Ed position, can you just give me a summary of the process that was used to interview and hire for that position, please?
Absolutely. The position for leadership positions, what we're doing now is posting internally and externally at the same time, taking in all of the candidates into consideration. Only the qualified candidates were eligible for interview, and there was a panel established to conduct the interview process. There were 14 people that interviewed for the position, and I believe it was a total of 8 or I think there were 7 that actually were in the interview. Sorry, that caught me off guard. All of a sudden it was loud. And there were 8 people that participated in the panel for the interview. And so that's a pretty consistent process of what we're doing with leadership positions. So there always will be a panel as well as posting internally and externally and reviewing for qualifications prior to the interview.
And generally speaking, what's the makeup of the panel? Is it different
There'll
levels
be
or?
all different levels of positions, so both possibly certified as well as classified leadership, as well as teachers, instructional staff.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments on discussion? Okay, there is a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. It's been seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Since we don't have any items that were pulled off or need to address from that, I will make a motion to adjourn our special meeting.
I second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. And now I will call our study session to order. For those of you following along, we are now on item 4B on our agenda, career development and 301 performance pay. I believe we have Gina DeCoste and some members of our career development committee.
Good evening, Madam President and members of the board. I facilitate the Career Development Committee, and we created a subcommittee to go through the 301 performance pay goals and take some of the recommendations that you gave us at a previous board meeting. So I would like to introduce 2 of the members of the subcommittee, Juliana Larson and Elizabeth Warren, and they'll be presenting tonight. Good evening, Madam President, governing board members, and Superintendent Gunning. We are very, very happy to be here today to present our career development and 301 performance pay proposal to you. Thank you so much for giving us this time. I wanted to let you know there were 7 members who contributed to this study session, and it spanned all parts of our district. So we have elementary, we have the junior high, we have people who are in the lower grades, the upper grades. We have instructional coach and behavior specialists. So we were wanting to add that diversity to this process. So we thank you very much again. So I wanted to start with our career development mission statement. So hold on. He's got it. Okay, so sorry, guys. So the purpose of career development and performance compensation plan of LESD is to recognize and improve the quality instruction resulting in greater student progress. And that truly is what our goal is. We know as educators, we are always striving to be better, to refine and hone our craft because we love these kids that we are involved with every single day. We wanted to go ahead and kind of highlight the goals of the plan. It's to create and implement a program of staff development that, combined with engaging instruction, provides for student success. We also want to develop an evaluation criteria, which are objective and results in improved instruction. We also want to formulate a compensation plan that's measured by observable teaching skills, higher levels of thinking and learning appropriate for each student as evidenced by student data, and to develop a compensation plan that will provide increased incentives for professional teachers.
All right, our current 301 performance awards are professional development. This year it is 15 hours of professional development. That was changed, or that was just added this school year, I should add. With COVID happening, it used to be a attendance bonus. So it was the attendance bonus before that we changed to the professional development goal. We also have professionalism as one of the 301 goals. Currently, any teacher who does not receive a letter of reprimand or anything greater, or any result in an ineffective, will receive the portion for professionalism money. And lastly, the third pot of our 301 money is student growth. And so that is also a little bit different this year because they are using school-wide growth versus classroom growth again because of the circumstances of this year only.
So we wanted to really go over the career development vision statement. When we look at this, we really were trying to dive deep into aligning with these pillars of your strategic plan. And so we thought that eliminating the professionalism component, because it really doesn't align with our strategic plan. And professionalism is an expectation. And so by eliminating that, it gave us more area to grow in other avenues. So what we would like to propose is looking at professional contribution goals. So this year we looked at 15 hours, and that was professional development. But when we were looking at the strategic plan, we really wanted to add something very, very unique. And we know community contributions are a huge part of our school family. So by continuing with our 15 hours of professional development, we wanted to add an either or, that we could also add in those community contributions. And so I wanted to give some examples because this is something that really creates that school family. When you think of PTSA events, you think of sporting events. What is the best way to connect with our children and our families? It's at these events. It's talking to them, it's being with them. And by fostering this and really celebrating what our teachers are doing, it's really going to just grow this school community family. So we would like to add an either or, 15 additional hours of community contributions, or it could be added professional development, because we know we have a distance learning academy coming up, right? So they may not have those opportunities, but they can go and they can get professional development in Screencastify, in Google. There's so many things out there that we can do to become better at our craft. So we're hoping that you'll also be able to see that. We would continue with our student growth goal with no change, and we would continue our teacher leader projects with no change.
The next is showing how each one of these areas align with our strategic plan. So for example, how the student growth aligns specifically with our student success column. Professional contributions goes directly into with people in service. And as you'll see, our teacher leader projects, we want to show honestly align with every pillar. There are teacher leader projects in there that fit along with each of them.
For our proposed 301 performance award goal number 1, I'm going to go back to what we were talking about, really looking at those community contributions and those professional developments. When we look at the pillars, we are going to find that under nurturing positive relationships between teachers and students. We know that that is key to all children. We're also looking at recruitment and continuous development of high quality employees, maintaining high retention rates. When we put everything together, fostering and developing strong community partnerships, that's really what the takeaway for our professional development and what we can do in our day or outside of our school day. We're building those community contributions, and we are also basically growing ourselves as teachers.
The next one is is just simply that we want to keep our student growth goal and not make any changes to that. That lies completely under the student success and really fits with all of the pillar of student success. So that student growth goal. And another pot, separate from the 301, is the career development, and that also has the student growth. But the teacher leader project is a large part of that. The teacher leader project is a project chosen by level 3 teachers on campuses that will support the campus with programs and extracurriculars, just really ways, I'm going to say, to make the campus better. That's honestly what it is. It makes the class or the school run and enhances everything for the students. Teachers are required to get a minimum of 30 hours, and they must keep a log. There's a benchmark log due in January of every year, and then in April we have to submit our final log with what we have done for our teacher leader project. This one comes out of a different fund than the 3-0. This comes from the M&O budget. And we wanted to point out how the teacher leader projects align so strongly to the strategic plan. Looking at this, there are teacher leader projects we could find as a committee that matched not just every pillar, but every single indicator in every pillar. So just a couple examples when it comes to student success, big ones are those student council, our student ambassadors, our NEHS, our NJHS, all of those programs where teachers are spending countless extra hours at school and with students to have these programs working. And under the people pillar, you have things like our special education mentors, where we are growing our teachers and mentoring them. We also have our PLC and solution tree leaders on our campuses, which are helping do PD within each campus and grow the teachers. When we get to the service, we have our conscious discipline teams on each team. And one that's very close to me is our stand-up speak up clubs that really are all about giving back. And I know there's Builders Club and so many things that teach our communities about giving back. And lastly, under the finance pillar, we have things like all of our after school clubs, the STEM club, the homework club, tutoring, before and after, all of the different things. I know there's chess club. There's so many different things that just get the kids engaged and give them something positive to do.
The career development proposal or recommendation is to continue teacher leader projects. We know that they are vital to our schools. We would like to add strategic plan alignment to the tail pre-approval paperwork, and a general example below, if we could just look here, how does it affect student achievement and school and district goal objectives? We have the pillar student success, the goal fostering academic excellence and innovative for all students. The pillar for people is to grow and develop leadership at all levels, and we know that's what our district is all about. On behalf of the Career Development Committee, we are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. This was awesome. It's a really great presentation. Thank you. I have a question or two, but I'll open it up to the floor if there's any discussion or question first.
I don't have any questions, but I did want to say that I was super happy with changing the professional development to add the additional hours, being involved in the community and stuff. As a former parent leader on a campus, I know that the events are going to be much more well attended with parents. Kids are dragging their parents there because their teacher is going to be there. If your teacher says, I'm going to be at Peter Piper Pizza Night, everybody's going to show up because
Yep.
they want to see their teacher. So, and we know that getting our families together with our teachers and our staff and bringing them on our campus and at our events is going to create a more positive environment for our students, which is going to mean higher student success because parent involvement is the #1 indicator for student success. So I'm all on board with that. I love it.
I agree with what Melissa said. Wholeheartedly. I thought that was an innovative idea to switch over to encompass more of the community and the LESD family portion. So I am 100% supportive of that. I have a question about the percentages. Do you anticipate it'll be like 50% based on the PD community involvement and 50% on student growth, or did you discuss that at all?
So we did. We actually, as a committee, we talked about the needs of every individual teacher. So we're not all alike. There are some of us who are very available because we have older children. So I can go to Peter Piper Pizza Night. I can do McDonald's night. I can do STEM night. There's so many things that are available to me because I don't have 4 children at home. So we're really looking at that and we're going to try to be flexible. That's the idea behind it because we all at different parts of our life have different commitments. So we would like that extra 15 hours to remain flexible because again, when we think of our DLA teachers, they may have an opportunity, but they may not. So we want to make sure that we're leaving those options open because we also know that professional development is vital to student success. And a lot of the times when I think of the PD we just had, it was on Kagan. And so what does Kagan teach us? Engagement strategies. So however those hours are spent, they're going to be well spent. Does that make sense?
Yes, totally agree with that. I'm sorry, I don't think I was clear on my question.
I think I understood though. So you are correct in terms of it will be 50%. When you take the 301 money, so it was 3, it will just be divided in half
Okay.
between student growth and the professional contributions.
Okay.
Would be just 50-50.
Thank you, which I think is super because as any economist will testify, incentives are key to positive behavior and reinforcing that. So that's fantastic. My only other question actually is for Superintendent Gunning. For quite a while, the board has been asking about data on PD. Are we closer to being able to get that on a board level to see what the average hours are per certified and classified and all that good stuff?
I will actually turn it right over to our executive director.
I can speak to that a little bit. We present in one presentation we had, I think it was to you guys back in January when they did their professional development benchmarks for teachers. And we had an average teacher benchmark of 15 to 30 hours at that time in January. So obviously that's increased more by now. But what we're finding when we're looking back at our program that tracks our professional development, historically speaking, our district has tracked PD for the purpose of recertification hours for teachers. So it's a little bit different than PD. So what we have in Inform, which is our database, doesn't always count for PD. It might be something different. It might be more of a meeting that you attended or just an informational session or something. It might not be like the more in-depth, I don't want to say rigorous, but the kind of professional development like Kagan that we have. So that varies widely across the district, but what we found, and we're putting together a report for you, it's just going through hundreds of thousands of hours at every single school over the last 3 years. So off the top of my head, in 2018-19, we averaged about 55 hours of PD per year per teacher. And the range is very great from a teacher that's new that might not be doing a lot of PD because they don't have the time and they're maybe part of the mentoring program with special education or something, to a reading specialist or behavior specialist that goes to training to get trained to give training. And so they may be over 100 hours a year. So that's kind of what we're looking at, deciding how we want to break that down. And then we realize that, which makes complete sense, the majority of our professional development occurs from pre-service time until about spring break. And then we come back from spring break and we roll into testing. We have very few early release days in March and in April and in May, obviously, because of all the testing and things like that. So most of the PD happens in the first 3 quarters of school. And so that's kind of where we're at. with that report. We have not in the past tracked classified professional development hours, except for during COVID when we tracked the PD hours that they were taking when they were working from home. So that would be something new that we would have to start.
Okay, I just want to be clear that I think tracking that in a more accountable manner would be appropriate because we do spend a lot of money and we allow our teachers to have quite a bit of time to be able to participate in PD. And I would like to have more accountability around that. And I know that teachers are doing the PD. It's not a question of whether they're doing it or not, but I would love to be able to use that as a recruitment tool to be able to say, the positive piece of that, because in the education world, I know it's widely touted that PD and the availability of that is a positive and that teachers want that for their own career development and that sort of thing. And so I'd like us to have more concrete numbers that are backed up with actual data to be able to support those.
Especially wrapping that around some of our big initiatives like Kagan, that is a highly sought after professional development, and that our teachers are able to receive that. I've received so many emails thanking us for the PD that they had on Friday. We had about 550 teachers on Zoom, and that's the actual attendance records from Kagan on Friday afternoon doing the first half of cooperative learning, day 1 or day 2, depending on where people are at. And they're just super enthusiastic about it, and they love the strategies. And so that kind of stuff, I think you're right. That's a great recruitment tool and a great thing to brag about in our district and all that we do with conscious discipline. And so, yeah, thank you.
I would agree two things to what you just said. Number one, I think I love the idea of dropping the professionalism first and foremost. Thank you. I didn't agree with that last year, but we did what we needed to do. And I agree with you. It's an expectation. So I think everyone's living up to that and then some. So I love the idea. By dropping one, it puts more focus on the two that we have left, which means more focus on student achievement, which is, ultimately why we're all here. So I think that's really important. My concern about, I think along the lines of what Kim was saying with the professional development, I think I'm absolutely on board for it. I think we could do more of it, and rewarding teachers for that is great. The concern I have is that we don't have accountability because if we can't say how many teachers are taking it and how many hours each person is taking, I'm concerned about we're giving performance pay based on something that we don't have concrete evidence on. I'm not saying it's not happening. I'm just saying I think it's important to be able to show exactly what's happening for multiple reasons, but one, accountability for the most part. And two, I want to make sure I understood what you said the average certified staff member is averaging like over 50 hours a year. Now I know teachers might be taking less, specialists might be taking more, I understand that, but if we're averaging that, it's a little, I'm just concerned that if we're only asking for 15 hours and they're already averaging 50 hours, I'm not sure that that's an incentive because they're already achieving that, I would say pretty easily. And I think that was a comment from earlier this year, is that before the first day of school, teachers had well over 15 hours of service. Now, I'm not saying they shouldn't be able to do it whenever they want, and it was absolutely needed this year. But if our average is significantly higher, I think that number should be significantly higher because we're achieving that and more. I don't know what the appropriate number is, and maybe with some more data we could say that, but I do think we should adjust that based on if that truly is the average of what our certified staff is doing.
So I want to clarify that what I said was recertification hours and professional development lumped into one database. So sifting through this is sifting through every single teacher and every single thing. So a teacher has 127 hours. And I guess my question to you is how best is our time spent going back and looking at what they've done or starting something new moving forward? Because Linda and I spent 3.5, 4 hours just going back 2 years to get you guys an average of what they've been doing, but also includes recertification hours, which isn't necessarily high quality PD. So because that's how we've tracked in the past. Now we know better, and now we know what we want it to look like in the future. So can we just start moving forward and going down that route of tracking what we're doing for how many hours for Kagan, conscious discipline, all of the other high quality ones that we're doing for Zoom and Google and Wonders and Study Sync and those kinds of things that really
are all encompassed inside of the initiatives that we're trying to accomplish within the district. To me, that would be more beneficial.
Let me ask a clarifying question before I give you my answer to that. So what you're saying is there a specific criteria? I don't see it here, but there may be further in the paperwork. Is there a specific criteria for what we're deeming professional development? And what I mean by that is if you're saying the recertification hours, you don't feel are up to stand, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but up to standards, other professional development we offer as quality, do those count for these hours?
No.
No, so there is a criteria of what will count towards these
Right.
hours and the other ones are separate. Okay.
And that's what I'm saying, what's so hard about sifting through Inform is that they're meshed together.
Mhm.
And so unless you go by in through each individual person and look at what they did on this day for how many hours and
Sure.
sort it out, there's no sort for
Right.
you kind of method. So
So what is the plan then? There'll be some sort of special app, some website they can go on and log, or what's this gonna look like next year?
So we're looking at, and we're getting way off track, but that's okay, because that's what you guys want to do. So we're looking at Frontline, two of the apps that we already use, one that we use for our substitute teaching and the other one is for something else. They have professional, for like our safe schools, they have professional development things built in that could just track PD better than what, not saying what we're doing is not bad, but it gives them all the recertification hours. And that was all the goal was in the district before, that was just to track recertification hours. I mean, it's really, it's a service to the teachers, really. I mean, some districts, you get a certificate, you save your certificates in a file and you take them down to the district. Here, you print off your Inform list and you have Dr. Pearson sign it and you send that in with your renewal for your recertification.
So in addition, though, they had a law that they had to list out everything and have it approved by their principal at the end of the year when they turn in all of their information. So it was tracked in a different manner from that perspective as an individual. So they had to list every single training that they did. But yeah, recertification has a lot more flexibility of things that you can count to get your certification.
Gina, I don't disagree with you that spending a lot of staff hours on, looking at the last 5 years of professional development is the best use of our time. But I do think it's a worthwhile discussion to say if we're going to give 50% of our performance pay dollars to professional development, that we have a very solid understanding of how you're going to track that and how teachers are going to do it and all of that kind of stuff and how many hours. So I agree moving forward is probably the best place to spend our time. But I do think to me, it's very important that we create a system that is both functional for tracking the certification, because I do agree that's a resource for our teachers. It makes it easier for them and all of that kind of stuff. So I do agree with that. But I think we also need some accountability and transparency to make sure that the money that the district is spending and the performance pay dollars that we're paying out are going for professional development that's meeting the criteria, how many hours people are doing, because we may need to adjust that based on needs going forward. We may adjust that up or down, that number based on, what's available and how many hours people are doing and things like that. So I do think the information is relevant, because not knowing what that number is, it's hard for me to say, yes, I think 15 is the absolute right number, if I
Right.
don't know what the expectation is right now. But I'm not sure we'll have that answer this year, but I think moving forward, that would be extremely helpful to understand.
And I think it's really important too, with having Juliana and Elizabeth present tonight, representing our teachers and our teachers saying, what's realistic for a teacher to do? I mean, some of them are already going to community events and doing all these things. So do we hold that against them and say, well, you are already putting in 3 hours now? So they're saying what they're doing and what they feel like is realistic for them to be compensated for. And that's really what it comes down to, because they're doing all of these things in the school to keep the school running and putting in the time for professional development and putting in the community hours. And we can't do it without them. We can't create the school families that we've created and the A-rated schools and some of our A+ schools for excellence. I mean, that happens not because you have an amazing leader, but because you have an amazing leader with a group of teachers that are committed and putting in the time. So I guess to me, it's never that it's not enough time. I mean, I think
And I think they will echo the same thing. And we're happy to track that for you guys for next year and all of the high quality PD pieces and get some really good hours, maybe even in January, just from the beginning of the year to January, and say, here's where we're at with Hagen, Wonders, and Study Sync and Conscious Discipline, and anything else that we're implementing, Nearpod, those types of trainings. Here's all the hours people have on those.
Yeah, and I think for the community, not community service, that's not the right word, but the community engagement piece, I think that's right on. I think that makes a lot of sense. It gives people the option, if they have the flexibility of time on nights and weekends to do that, they can. If they don't, they can participate in other professional development that can be either online or in person or whatever, flexible with their schedule. I completely agree with that. Where I may diverge a little bit is that we give teachers time, contract time, to do professional development. And if we give them, I'm absolutely making up these numbers, but if we give them 25 hours a year to do that, and they're only required 15 to get additional money on top of their base pay, that's where I have the problem. If we're already paying them for those contract hours. And so this performance pay, it should be above and beyond. So I just want to make sure the hours are equivalent to not just what they're doing during the contract time, but potentially other time. I'm not saying they can't do it during their contract time. I'm just saying, I just want to be cognizant that this is performance pay. It's not part of their base salary. So it may require them to do extra hours, but it's not a requirement for their job. It's just extra.
I would also
It
like
is.
to point out, though, that the majority of all of our professional development has a their note goes after their contract. It's very rare that a teacher leaves at contract time. So it does push out. And then just always remember that whatever we're taking away in that time, say it's a Monday afternoon, meeting usually starts 3:15. By the time the kids get gone, their contract time ends at 3:30. That's usually about when they're starting their PD, and then they're lasting till whenever it is. And then that pushes out. So I always try to balance. So whatever they're doing during that time, they're taking all that typical reading papers, looking at tomorrow, which small groups do I need to pull, what adjustments do I need to make. That's what they're doing at home during their family time. So I definitely always feel and have never felt that we're losing any time as an organization. We're giving time.
And I think, just I'm to sorry. clarify, the career development piece is really the above and beyond piece that we look for that performance pay too. And that's 30 hours outside. That has to be 30 hours outside of the school day. So we have to be careful to be able to give our teachers that balance. And with the 301 performance plan, it can be some of the things that it can be as simple as the parent survey can be a part of it, which isn't anything above and beyond the school day. Student attendance can be a part of it. Your school label can be a part of it. All of those things that don't actually require teachers to do extra work are in statute that they're able to do. So it doesn't necessarily have to be above and beyond the school day as it's written. I just want to point out too, that when we approved this last year for this year, it was only 15 hours of professional development. And they did listen to us, I feel like, when we said we want more by adding an additional 15 hours to it. So I think that they are trying to do that. And if we see next year that the numbers are just way higher, then maybe we say, we appreciate you teachers going above and beyond, and we're going to keep asking more of you. But I think we should kind of just step it up slowly rather than jumping all at one time.
Melissa, I missed the first part of what you said. I'm sorry.
That we started out only asking for 15 hours for them this year. And so
Mhm.
this already is an increase, like increasing it from 15 to
Oh,
30.
okay. I'm sorry.
So
That's the part I didn't.
I think that,
understand.
yeah, so I think they've already listened to when we asked them to do more.
Agreed. Thank you.
So I just wanted to add, I don't know if it's known, most teachers double their contract time, and I'm not exaggerating. I'm in school at 6. I leave between 4 and 5, and I go home and I grade papers. I work on the weekends. So I feel like we are giving everything. Every bit of time we're giving, it takes time to sort, to get data, because we know small groups are what some children need. They need more than just tier 1. Sometimes they need tier 2 and tier 3. So the time is very, very well spent. And I don't think that this is, we're not doing enough. It's celebrating what we are doing, because I cannot tell you how much we love what we do, but we work very, very hard. And so by celebrating what we are doing and encouraging, for me, it's more of the community development, because the PD piece, we're getting it and we're going to keep getting it. And as you grow and evolve as an educator, that's how you continue to affect positively student outcomes and mentoring people. But when we look at 30 hours, because that's really what it is, it's 30 hours. I think that if you give it a chance to really look, you'll see that it's fair. It is, because we are doing so much, and this is where we start.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I just want to say, I think when we get that accountability piece together with the PD, we'll find that most teachers, as you said, are going above and beyond. I know as an educator myself, we do things, but we don't necessarily label it.
Absolutely.
So I think as a whole, Litchfield teachers are going above and beyond, but it's just important to have that accountability so that moving forward, you have proof to what we've been saying.
And I don't think there will be a teacher out there who would not be willing to log it and to prove it. When I think of just even the past 2 years, I was part of the STAR program for the Arizona Science Center. So we spend 1 week on one module, and you guys, it's all day and it's 5 days. And it's so I could learn how to be a 21st century educator for science and teaching children hands-on STEM engineering and looking at all of those wonderful hands-on kinesthetic, because we want our children to learn that way. That's nowhere in the log. That's just what I did. So I don't think that you're setting a bar too low. I think what you're going to see is every teacher is going to rise to the occasion, and we're there. If you can just give us a chance, and the accountability, absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind that we can't get that accountability piece, and that is expected. I would want the same thing from my students in my classroom, and that is an absolute reasonable request.
Anybody else? Thank you very much. Great presentation.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Okay, moving on to item 4C, communication protocol for superintendent and governing board members. Superintendent Gunning is going to present.
Madam President, members of the governing board. We felt like it was perfect timing having a brand new board member joining us, as well as a new board member joining us in January, to kind of put into writing some of the things that previously as a board we have talked about, kind of committed to, and kind of just putting it all in one document of the superintendent to governing board communication and my commitment to you as superintendent, as well as governing board to superintendent communication. And then governing board to our school attorney, just so that that's kind of outlined. And then just kind of which policies and that these components would align to. So we wanted to just have discussion tonight, kind of give you a little bit of time to kind of look it over. We would bring it back in April for further discussion and approval by our governing board.
Great, thank you, Jody. Has everyone had a chance to look over the protocols? I don't believe there's anything new in here. Is that correct, Jody? I mean, like I said, from our policies and from our governing board norms and everything, it's just kind of everything all be in one place. I don't think there's anything new necessarily, but still important for us to review it and make sure that we all understand and agree to it. Any questions or discussion for Jody? This is for information only tonight, and then it'll be back for approval in our April 13th, I believe, meeting, our regular meeting next month.
It is, but it's nice to have it in one spot, because there's a lot coming at you as a governing board member too. And so it's nice to have it in one centralized place, as well as if there's something we need to revisit in the future. It's always in one spot that we can bring it back and say, okay, let's go back to, communication protocol. And it could be even something like, hey, Jody, all of a sudden we stopped receiving Friday updates, or there was an emergency that occurred and you didn't let us know. That's holding me accountable. Same thing with governing board members, like if there's something that was going to be a surprise to me, it's a great thing that I can revisit and say, hey, when that surprise happens, or newspaper article or anything like that, that it's great to have that heads up.
I don't disagree.
I think there's some pieces that are policy and also some pieces that are practice, if that makes sense. So like having questions for our governing board meeting, having them to us by that noon prior on that Monday, that's really helpful. So that's kind of a practice, not necessarily a policy, but
I see what you're
still,
saying. So
you know what I
those
mean?
are things we're already doing, but it's not good.
Right, right. So it just kind of puts it all in one piece. Just even in relation to proper chain of command from an employee perspective, but also vice versa, from boards to employees, that type of thing, and making sure we're following those protocols. So it's kind of an all-inclusive spot to have everything.
Okay, this will also be in addition to our governing board norms, which is another document we have approved. I think we will bring it back potentially for review now that Dr. Armstead is here, because as you're being a part of that group, again, I think just good protocol and communication practice to keep us all, accountable and to know what the expectations are of ourselves.
I have a question. In practicality, how would we execute the accountability piece of this? Toward each other as board members or toward you as superintendent? I mean, this question really is open to anybody on the board.
I think there's multiple ways that it could be. If I was doing something that needed to be brought to attention, I think our governing board president is a great person to start with. Stating that maybe there's something we need to revisit or discuss, and I think that could happen either way. Something that we needed revisit. I think this is a document along with your norms that I could see revisiting multiple times throughout the year as well. It's just kind of a check-in during the board retreats, those types of things. If there's something that we need to look at, as well as it's something that we could always could be an agenda item for. Felt like there was something we needed to add to or take away or modify and adjust, especially if there was ever a policy change in such situation.
I mean, I think as board members, we have a lot of ways to hold Jody accountable in terms of employment and that kind of thing, right? I mean, we have meetings multiple times a year where we can discuss, her performance and things like that. But Kim, to go to your conversation amongst board members, I think to me, it just goes back to our board norms. I mean, I think we have to hold ourselves accountable personally, but also each other. So if we're not, obeying protocols, or we're not, participating in the board norms the way that they were approved, then I think, that's a discussion we need to have as board members and try to rectify that amongst ourselves. There's not anybody else, unfortunately, that really has the ability to hold us accountable, immediately for those kind of things. So I think that's just something we handle amongst the group.
But we don't really have the opportunity to have conversations. So I guess I'm having a hard time. I support this document 100%. I support what it is trying to accomplish. I'm just trying to understand how it can be implemented to impact better behavior or more appropriate behavior.
I would say two things, and this is just my opinion for discussion. One, as Jody mentioned, if there is board to superintendent or board member to board member, as the president, if there's anything that I can do to help facilitate conversation or anything like that, that's difficult to do outside of the board meeting because of open meeting law and, sort of discussing things. We will address that as necessary. We can certainly do anything that we can do offline in terms of that. Another thing is, as Jody mentioned, addressing it through an agenda item. If this is a protocol that we want to approve and a process, then that's obviously something that we can and should just address here. Unfortunately, these are the only times that we get together as a group and can talk about those things. So this is where we would do that and have that again. And I think what you're getting at is that, there's no repercussions in terms of anything that would happen to us as board members, but I do think all of us have our own responsibility and integrity and want to be the best board members that we can. And I think if someone brought that to our attention and we were having that conversation here, I'm hoping everybody would participate and try to do the right thing. Any other feedback? Okay, so this document is online and you can see it right here. So read through it. If there's any other questions or anything, send that to Jody before the next meeting in April. And then we will bring it back for approval. And again, another discussion if there had been any associated changes or recommended changes from any board members. Okay. And I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I motion to adjourn.
I will second.
Great, thank you both. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for attending.
I know Bob was done for a while, but now that I saw the FBI cyber, my Bob on my computer, it comes up with the black screen.
Yeah.
And that has happened for months. Even the cameras. At least for once you go away, and maybe once they pop up and say, "Well, that's not my name." Now I'm getting just a plain black box about 5 or 6 times a day. Other people. And it's not, you don't, at first I thought it was related to vision. You don't have to have vision.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the black box is just a command line. And so a lot of stuff that do's in the background, like updates. So even like the kids testing with Windows computers, they'll get the black box and it's their game block coming up.
See, nothing comes up with it.
Yeah.
There's like no type of just like black box and you can't do anything else until you there's no typing there. The part hurts me out because I can feel like typing.
Yeah.
And now it's just.
So, yeah, when you look at it, the box and you run the command, so any like batch file, it's gonna pop the command box up. But if the first thing you put in there is echo off, then you can't see any typing. So, and then when you exit the box, usually there's an exit command, it's a program box. So when any other box types on, if they don't actually turn echo back on, you'll never see it. But we use it, so one of the things that uses that box for us is malware bytes. And they actually are updating the virus definitions. So I don't know if that's it or not, but we can try to shut off the malware bytes.
So that counts out of it, so they can run whatever they're doing.
Disconnects out of it. So I gotta look and see. I can go look at the history of some of our computers and see if that's what it actually is. But, so Windows did a crazy update, this last update that we did, and there's a lot of stuff that went kind of kind of lengthy. So one is like us getting to get the command line. It used to be able to just go in and run any command, but now we actually got a switch directly to the Windows and System 32 to run even a simple screen command. So with this last update, it moved up a lot of stuff that's there. So, yeah. Exactly. So you can hear it on what?
Hey, Brad.
Yes, sir. Hey,
Is,
hang on just 1 second.
okay, you got double stuff.
Yeah, yes.
Zoom is off.